Hey guys, it's Alexandra. As we get closer to summer and beach season, I thought it would be a good time to have a discussion about body image. Today we're going to be talking about the male side of things. You know, you hear in the media a lot about unhealthy beauty standards for women and women suffering from eating disorders. And while all that is very valid, you know, you don't hear a lot from the male side. So we're going to be talking to William, who is a singer and actor. He also is recovering from an eating disorder. So he's going to be giving his insight into, diet culture, toxic masculinity, body neutrality, intuitive eating, all sorts of things. So I hope that you will stay tuned to hear his perspective, hopefully gain some resources if you're someone who's struggling, and you can subscribe for more videos as well. Thank you so much.
Let me get this straight. Your body has kept you alive during a deadly global pandemic, and you're upset with it because it doesn't look the way you want it to? It had other priorities, and it delivered on them. You know what I fucking hate? I'll tell you. This is my Instagram Explore page. All I do on Instagram, all I do is like photos for my friends. But Instagram knows I'm a gay man. And so they give me this shit. It is not normal to take a photo and then come back to it 3 days later and be like, I wish I still looked like that. You do.
So I developed an eating disorder, if I have to think back, around the time I was 9 or 10 years old. I recently realized that a big part of that might have been using We Fit as a child. And I think that that's like a common experience for a lot of children, or like people who are now young adults who were children in 2008. Like, I think that that was the origin of a lot of body dysmorphia and body shaming. That's definitely around when it started for me. There were other things that factored into it, of course, like growing up around diet culture and just a predisposition to problems with food and with your body image that come with living and existing within Western culture. So that heavily impacted me as a child. I am also a gay man, and I work in musical theater. So both of those communities, both the gay community and the musical theater community, are incredibly toxic when it comes to body image and the use of body size as social capital. So that made things worse for sure. And I, around summer of 2019, I went to a registered dietitian at my university, and I was eating vegetarian for the environment at the time, which, spoiler alert, was not for the environment, but was just like a form of unnecessary food restriction that I was putting on myself without like subscribing to diet culture, which, you know, I still was. Not that you can't be vegetarian, but I was not vegetarian for the right reasons. Um, and so I went to this dietitian and I was like, I don't think I'm doing vegetarianism properly. And she was like, let's talk about your relationship with food. And I told her what was going on, and she was like, wow, so there's a lot going on here. I don't have the qualifications to diagnose you with it, but I'm going to send you to a therapist who can, and then come back to me and we'll work. And so I found this therapist that she recommended who worked with her, like was educated along with her in eating disorder recovery. And I have an eating disorder recovery therapist who, you know, I got my eating disorder diagnosis, and then I went back to my dietitian and we started working. That's my team. They're still my team. I worked with her that entire summer. She took a summer break, like right before the fall semester started, and I ghosted her. I didn't ghost my therapist. I saw my therapist consistently, but I stopped seeing my dietitian, and things got really bad. That semester, I fell into a depressive episode, and I fell into a really like emotional binge and restrict cycle with my food consumption. and and guilt associated with it. And I got to the end of that semester, and the cloud of depression was lifting, and I reached out to her, and I was just like, I need to see you. I think I'm gonna like address this. And we met, and I was about to go study abroad in Rome, and she was like, why don't you enjoy Rome while you can? Because Rome is not free from diet culture, but like the way that they see food in Italy and Europe is much different than how they see it in the US. Like diet culture is not as prevalent. It's a much more enjoyable experience to eat food. And I was like, great. I went there, and mind you, my eating disorder was in no way cured by being there. Like I still had my eating disorder. I still had body image problems, but they weren't as at the forefront of my mind at all times. They weren't triggered by my environment nearly as much. And I then the world ended, and Italy shut down first, and I came back to the US, and I relapsed pretty hard back into everything I was going through beforehand. And I was always planning on like reaching out to my dietitian as soon as I got back, because I was initially going to do a dance intensive in New York City. I was like, I have an eating disorder, and that's definitely going to make it worse if I don't see my dietitian over the summer. But that dance intensive did not happen. Um, and because pandemic. And I got back in touch with her, and we started to really work on my eating disorder. And my therapist and I, who, she's very trained in eating disorder recovery. We had not addressed my eating disorder much at all because we were dealing with a bunch of other trauma. But I was like, I'm ready to work on this thing. And we did. And one of the hardest things I came across while doing it was that I couldn't find any men talking about their eating disorders. There weren't any like social media influencers talking about it. I mean, there were plenty of women, there were plenty of like female dietitians, and like they were all very helpful, and I was very grateful for them. But there's a certain extent to which you need to see yourself represented in order to feel validated. And I could not find that. I didn't have that. And then I was like, well, I'm just dumb. Like I can't find it because I'm not like utilizing Google and TikTok and Instagram in the way I'm supposed to. And so I asked my dietitian and my therapist to go on a hunt for me, and they came up short too. Like they couldn't find anything, and they're professionals in the field. And so by some miracle, I and through a lot of hard work, I got to a much better place with my eating disorder. And in October, I started carving pumpkins on TikTok. I carved 18 pumpkins in October. And I was very proud of that. And they were all very good. And I gained 13,000 followers doing that. And I got to the end of November after like a month off from pumpkin carving, because it was, October was over. And I was like, I had a little bit of a lapse around Thanksgiving with my eating. And I got to the end of the night on Thanksgiving and was like, what do I need to hear someone say right now? And so I got in front of my camera and I made a TikTok video about it. And I have done that since. And there was clearly a vacuum of like no male representation in the eating disorder community, because I now have almost 212,000 followers on TikTok and 37,000 on Instagram as of today. So it's ridiculous how fast that has grown, and I'm very grateful for all of it. And I think that it's less because of me and more because there was just like an immense need for what I am doing. And I hope that more men do it soon.
Yeah, definitely. What have you been able to connect with other people who are suffering with the same thing?
Oh my God, yeah. Tons of people. I mean, I've really, one of my favorite things about this is I've created a bit of a community. There are a lot of people who consistently attend my lives on TikTok, And on my lives, the format of my lives is like I eat meals with people to make them feel more comfortable eating. And also to get me through meals sometimes. It's symbiotic. And I am very grateful for the community that I've developed there. And also I've had a lot of men, mainly in confidence, come to me and say, like, yeah, I have an eating disorder and I feel insecure about talking about it because they're framed as a feminine issue, and Western society hates femininity, and it demonizes it. And it when we label something as exclusively feminine, men don't speak up about it.
Right. How do you think it's interesting that you brought up yourself being kind of one of the only men that you feel, that you wanted to have that representation that you wish you would have had, and how
Mhm.
that community is lacking of males speaking out about eating disorders. How do you think society treats the two differently? Treats, eating disorders in women different than they do with men?
Well, so with eating disorders in women, there is a pretty wide acknowledgement and acceptance of like the fact that it is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like much further past the conversation, like the basic introductory conversation of like, women have eating disorders. This is what an eating disorder looks like, you know? And it's not entirely past that, but like there's so much research that has been done on women with eating disorders, and there's so much work that has been done for women with eating disorders that like it's just well represented at this point. For men, it's just not well represented, and it's normalized is like one of the biggest issues. Like if you think of the kids on the wrestling team in high school and how they were cutting and bulking to meet a certain weight class, that's not healthy eating, especially when it comes to the inevitable emotional component that comes along with that. If you see a little boy with a shirt on in the pool, it's not because he prefers to have a shirt on in the pool, like just for fun, just because it's more comfortable. Like it's because he has bad body image. Gym culture in the United States, in particular, is really, really toxic for a lot of men. And there's some men who go to the gym and it's totally fine, and it's not a problem at all. And there are people who watch what they eat and they exercise a certain way, and it's fine and it's not emotional for them. But for a lot of men, it is emotional, and that emotion is expressed through rage, through um, through shouting sometimes. It's I can't even tell you the amount of women who have reached out to me and said that like their relationship with their boyfriend ended because their boyfriend had an immensely bad eating disorder.
Yeah.
And like I mean, and male rage is obviously a well documented thing. It comes out of toxic masculinity, and toxic masculinity is a known killer of other men themselves, trans people, and most notably women. Um, and Liz Plank actually has a really great book on that called For the Love of Men, and I highly recommend reading it if you haven't already. Um, and I mean, it's a part of toxic masculine culture that we don't acknowledge that men can have eating disorders and deserve recovery.
Yeah, I think it's also so difficult to navigate during this time of like kind of not going out as much, especially toward the beginning of COVID. But still now I feel like, there's this whole, and especially as we get closer to summer, there's like this whole online narrative of I'm using this time to get ripped. I'm using this time to transform.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
how do you adjust your mental health to not get triggered by that?
So the thing about that is it's another like diet culture ploy.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, our bodies are not these malleable things that we have total autonomy over their appearance. Like, we don't. I think that it's a major misconception that like you should be able to have control over what your body looks like, to a certain extent, um, and overvaluing it. When your entire life is about how your body looks, that's not a good relationship with your body image. And the trend of developing a summer body, is just immensely damaging. What you have to do to have a summer body is have a body in the summer. I would also argue that, and I have a very viral video about this at the moment, which is this concept of your body just got you through a pandemic. Like, it has no obligation to look a certain way. It just worked its ass off to not only like help you not get the virus or fight off the virus if you had it and survived it, but also like survive the loneliness of social distancing. Like, we are not meant to be apart in this way. It has been a huge detriment to a lot of people's mental health that we have been so isolated this year. And your body has gotten you through that. So like, you can't be upset with how it looks right now. I mean, and that's not to deter anyone from, or like invalidate anyone's feelings, rather. If they feel that way. I still feel that way sometimes. I'm still in recovery, but like, the thing that we have to recognize about mental illness is that it is irrational. And so it is worth putting a rationalization into that situation of like, my body just did XYZ. Why am I mad about M? Like, my body just did so much. Why am I angry that it isn't doing the one thing, this one thing that like doesn't actually really matter? And it's about rationalizing that, because irrationally we value the way our bodies look. Yeah. So that's what I have to say about a summer body. Also, and I'm not sure if this is a nuanced take, but like, go to the beach to go to the beach. Don't go to the beach to take beach pics. Like, you can just enjoy the beach. I promise. Like, it's fun. Go swim in the water. Go be with your friends. You don't need to take pictures in a bikini. They don't need to go on Instagram. You do what you want to do. Have fun. If you're not going to feel comfortable in a bikini, wear a one piece. If you're not going to feel comfortable with your shirt off, wear a shirt on. It's fine. Just enjoy your time at the beach.
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially too, with all the attention toward the body positivity movement that's been happening online, I think there's so many benefits to that, but I feel like there's also some things about it that aren't as productive as people think it is. So what is kind of your take on that movement and how it's being handled, and some of the things about it that you think are working and some of the things you think could improve?
So the body positive movement, let's be very clear about what the body positive movement is. It was created by Black, fat, queer, and disabled women. It's a very intersectional movement for people in larger bodies, for people who are fat. It is for people who, it is meant to deconstruct the systems that are fat phobic in society, because the world that we live in is not designed for fat people. And it is meant to combat the discrimination that fat bodies face for existing. Body positivity is not a movement for anyone who is not fat. And so I don't think that there are any problems with the body positivity movement, because it is not my place as a smaller bodied white man to comment on it. I'm not disadvantaged by society because of my size, you know? And I fortunately will never experience that because that's not what I'm genetically predisposed to.
Mm-hmm.
But larger bodies are documented throughout the entire history of man. It's not a like fetishization or a normalization. Well, I would say that it's not a lot of people like to criticize the positivity. The wow, sorry, I'm tripping over my words right now.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people like to criticize the body positive movement and say that like they are putting fatness up on a pedestal and like it's like an anti-exercise or anti like healthy eating movement, and that's simply not true. Like it's nobody, no one who is a part of the body positive movement is going to tell you you should be fat or you should want to be fat. Like that's not the goal, and the mischaracterization of that as the goal is a is a it's a logical fallacy. It's not at all the point of the movement. The movement is to normalize the existence of fat bodies so that they are no longer discriminated against. Um, and so I don't think that there are any problems with it. I think that there are problems with its perception, like the way it's perceived, but I don't think there are any problems with it. And I think that it is really, really important. And it is our responsibility as smaller bodied people to listen to people in larger bodies
Mm-hmm.
and give them platforms and defend them when they are being disadvantaged.
Yeah. Yep. That's a very interesting take. Because I do see a lot of, that hashtag or whatever people put under those videos. And I think, part of it is to get more views. If it's something trending, more people will look at it, even if you might not understand what it's standing for.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I see a lot of different type of people participating in that. So it helps to get a little bit of clarification on,
Yes, I sorry, not to cut you off, but I recommend researching the body positivity movement and its origins. Absolutely, look up the health at every size movement as well. The real movement that people are like using the term body positivity to refer to is the self-love movement and body neutrality, which is this idea of, not overvaluing the way your body looks
Mhm.
and like taking in as many different aspects of your being into that equation that determines how you value yourself. So I would recommend to anyone who is not fat to use the terms body neutrality, self-love, not body positivity, because that is a very, very different thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it is, recently in the news. I didn't expect this to happen right before I talked to you because I know we had this this interview planned for a little bit, but I don't know if you've been keeping up with the whole Demi Lovato situation and her.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, her. So she went into a frozen yogurt shop and I think they had something titled guilt free, and it was like
Yeah.
sugar free, dairy free stuff. If you wanted to choose that, they had that option. And, she was really upset about it, saying like it's diet culture and it triggered her and whatever. What is your, people, I noticed most of the reactions I saw to that were negative, but I'm just wondering, as somebody who struggles with an eating disorder like she does, what was your perception of that situation?
So first I want to say that like I think that there's this trend throughout the past decade of piling on to Demi Lovato whenever something goes even slightly wrong in her life.
Yeah.
And I think it's really unfair. Like if you ever look at any of her like Instagram posts, if you look at the comments, like they are all vicious. Like that woman goes through so much hardship in terms of like her public perception. So like that is something to acknowledge and just keep in mind. Um regarding what happened, I kind of hate that it is the news story that it is, because I don't think it's as big a deal as it is, and I think that if it weren't Demi Lovato, it would not be.
Right.
But people love to hate Demi Lovato. That said, I think that we live in a world that treats news stories like that as black and white when they're very gray. Demi Lovato posted about that small business by name and said in the initial post about it that she was upset that they were offering sugar-free options. Later on, it was revealed that there was there's a picture that says like, guilt-free was what it said. It didn't say sugar-free, it said guilt-free. She presented the information wrong. And so like that's like her specificity of words should have been better. Absolutely. Because saying that someone should not have sugar-free options is ableist. So there is that. But the reality of the situation is it didn't say sugar-free, it said guilt-free. And then maybe had like sugar-free and like dairy-free underneath, but like it was advertised as guilt-free. It's LA, everyone is immersed in diet culture. So Demi's criticism was absolutely valid. It was voiced poorly, but it was absolutely valid. What wasn't great, and what I don't think was a good idea, was calling out the specific small business. I think that she easily could have said, I went to a frozen yogurt place and they had guilt-free written, and I think that that is incredibly wrong. But that's not how things played out. I think that the business is wrong for having guilt-free on their food. But I also think all companies that do that are wrong. And there are plenty of non-small businesses who do that as well. And so I think that the criticism would have been much more potent and received better if it had been regarding just like the trend of writing guilt-free about things in general, and like given the frozen yogurt place the cloak of anonymity. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. And I think that like it's a very gray situation. And people are really loving to, pile onto the the yogurt store, pile onto Demi Lovato, and like just take this situation for what it is. It's like largely a miscommunication, and also, Demi Lovato should not have called out a small business in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah. So how do you,
But like, yeah,
when you, as somebody who's recovering, especially during a time where I feel like it's easy for old habits to be brought back up, how do you manage, things like triggers? They talk about people, people are very, I feel like that's such a popular term to use right now, that you're triggered by something. How do you use, the skills that you've gained through therapy and things like that to manage your own triggers? How would you advise somebody that's going through an eating disorder or recovering to, block out any of that stuff that might be uncomfortable or might, create a lapse in your recovery?
So I'd like to state before I answer this, like, I'm not a professional, and that if you are struggling with this, you should see a registered dietitian or a therapist who specializes in eating disorder recovery. And ideally, both of them are trained in the practices of intuitive eating. What works best for me is I like to, again, look at things like, is this rational? If I'm triggered by something, like if I see a comment that is triggering, I tend to think like, is this idea rational? Is this idea that this is giving me rational? What do I know for a fact? I know my body needs food. I know my body needs food consistently. I know that my body needs food approximately every 3 hours, or just as I am hungry, and as I am full, I stop eating, right? I know that restricting leads to more binging. I know that my body is not going to change drastically in one day based on any consumption of any kind of food. One day is not enough time for my body to change drastically. I know that my body is working to keep me healthy and safe at all times. And I know that I am more than my body. And like just being able to like find those objective truths in those moments helps ground me and steer me away from partaking in actions that are initiated by irrational thoughts.
Right. And what do you hope when you make these videos? What are you hoping that people take away from, the things that you're sharing?
Okay, so one of the main takeaways that I hope people have is that they shouldn't invalidate the things that they are going through. One of the biggest issues for me in starting recovery was I kept telling myself I was faking it for attention. That like I didn't have an actual eating disorder because it wasn't. Like I don't have anorexia nervosa, and therefore like it's not a real eating disorder. And I'm making it up for attention, and like it's not like that important. Even though it was making me miserable, and mental health is as important as physical health, you know. And so the main thing I would say is like, if you think you are struggling with something, find out. Go to a professional. Go to 2 professionals. Get a second opinion. Go consult with a therapist if you can. Go consult with a registered dietitian if you can. And if you don't have access to those things, because healthcare is unfortunately a privilege and not a right in this country, that's how it's treated. I recommend getting the Intuitive Eating Workbook. There's a link to it where you can buy it in my on my website, williamhornby.com, under the resources tab, where you can find TikTok accounts I recommend that people follow, and articles that I think are important, therapist search engines, books I recommend, podcasts I recommend. That is all there. I recommend recognizing that you have an emotional struggle with food, and diagnoses are privileges in a situation where healthcare is not treated as a right. So arguably, an undiagnosed eating disorder is more dangerous than a diagnosed one, because a person who has a diagnosed eating disorder has access to healthcare. But a person who's struggling with an undiagnosed eating disorder doesn't. And that's a worse situation. And I recommend getting whatever resources you can, whether that's reaching out to therapists in your area and seeing whether they can take on any clients at a really discounted price, or finding out from any dietitians in the area whether there are any free groups you can partake in, or whether there are any online support groups that you can join. Like, find whatever resources you can. Follow dietitians on TikTok. Follow eating disorder recovery accounts on TikTok. Find community. If you can't get access to those individualized resources, do everything you can to identify the problem, identify what you think you might be going through, and then get whatever resources you can to help you get through it. And the Intuitive Eating Workbook, I really can't emphasize enough, is like the best thing you can get. It's written by 2 of the most brilliant dietitians in the industry, and they founded the intuitive eating movement, which is the basis for almost all eating disorder recovery practice.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your insight. Is there anything, I know you've talked so much about eating disorders that can be hard and weighing on you. What are you looking forward to, like with your acting? I know you're an actor, right?
Yes, I am. I am an actor. I'm looking forward to a lot of things. I am starting a podcast soon, actually, that doesn't have to do with eating disorders. It's going to be called William and Friends, the people who made me. William and Friends : the people who made me. And I'm just going to interview all of the really, really fantastic and cool people, friends and mentors that I have in my life. I have a lot of really, really interesting individuals in my life. And so each episode I'll be interviewing them. I'm a singer-songwriter, so I have music that's coming out later this year. And I'm working on my first single right now. I have a production meeting for it tomorrow morning. And theater is kind of non-existent right now at the current moment, but I am looking forward to its potential return. I still have a year left of school. I've finished my business degree in a few days, but I get re-enrolled and I finish my musical theater degree next year. So that's exciting. I have that ahead of me, and I'm also backpacking / driving across the United States this summer. So that's a cool thing I'm doing as well.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and I look forward to hearing your podcast and following your content. So I really
Thank
think
you.
your voice is helping a lot of people. So I hope that you will keep doing what you're doing.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. It was so great to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
All right. Stay in touch.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good one.